Good evening, ladies and gentlemen. I'm Lieutenant Stephen Rogers here with John McCann at Campaign for America. Folks, we have a lot to talk about tonight, and they are critical issues. These are issues that you brought to our attention that we want to address this evening. The first one, John, that I want to address is the question people are asking: who do we believe? With regard to a lot of information that is being brought to us by multiple sources regarding the integrity issue, the election integrity issue, the fraud issue, etc. Now, folks, I've been pretty quiet about that. People have noted that. In fact, I have received messages from people saying, Lieutenant, you've been pretty quiet about this entire episode regarding election integrity. Can you give us some guidance? How do you feel about it? Where are we now with this, and where are we headed? So here's my view, folks. Now, keep in mind that my entire life, worked with U.S. military intelligence and investigated hundreds, if not a few thousand cases involving all sorts of crimes, all sorts of criminal activity. So I would consider myself pretty well versed on that. And John McCann is an attorney. I'm sure he's been in court many times with regard to a lot of these issues. So here's my take on it, folks. I tweeted something out earlier, and let's start with that. The first tweet that I tweeted out, and I did get a pretty interesting response. The America First agenda is the greatest movement in our time. We must protect it and ensure that what we share with the public is credible and undeniably factually based. The American people deserve our best. Stay tuned. And then the second one, I followed that up by stating this. And please listen carefully, folks, because this is important. Intelligence and information regarding an investigation is never released to the public as evidence regarding a criminal act unless it has been vetted by multiple experts and corroborated by multiple witnesses. The credibility of the case and investigators are at stake. Now, folks, I'm going to tell you right out, and maybe some of you don't want to hear it, but I've got the impression that a lot of you want to hear what I'm about to say because you're as confused as a lot of people in this country about all the information, all these TV shows, everybody's doing an audit, everybody's doing a forensic study. All kinds of people are now expert investigators, finding this and finding that. My take on this is simply this. Folks, believe me when I tell you, when an investigation, especially to the extent and the magnitude of this investigation has to be, is going on, the investigators are not going to publicize anything. Nothing. You don't publicize anything at all with regard to an investigation of this magnitude. Why? Because it could be immediately compromised. The credibility could come under attack. And John, what I've seen is most of these so-called investigations and forensic studies are under attack. But they're not just under attack from the Democrats or the left. They're under attack from people in our own party, if you will, conservatives and Republicans, who fully understand what is needed and what is necessary to build a strong case. And this is where you come in, John, as a lawyer, to build a strong case to prove that you're right and they're wrong. What say John McCain?
Well, whether you're a lawyer or you're working at Walmart, it really doesn't matter. You really need to judge matters accordingly to evidence. Hoping things would be true or wanting things to be true or speaking about rumors that may partially be true without evidence, Steve. We have to be very careful here. Right now the Republic is in a balance act. Some people believe that we're heading down a very dark path. Some people believe that the left has bit off more than they can chew, and that the conservatives, the mainstream conservatives, and the America First movement is going to make a roaring comeback. But when you're talking about matters of such vital importance, alleging facts that may or may not be true, you really got to be careful if you're a public figure. Now, I'm aware of Mr. Lindell. I've met Mr. Lindell and actually got a chance to tour his factory and was a guest when I was a candidate. And I thought he was he had a tremendous American success story. And watching what he did with his factory and how he built his business, and more importantly, how he treated the employees and how much they loved him, I was very impressed with him. So I don't know from where he's coming from with regard to some of this stuff that he's been alleging. But I would caution anyone from the public to be careful of anything. Be careful about what I'm saying. Be careful about what you're saying. Check it out for yourself. The wonderful news about today's America, we have a double-edged sword, the internet. And a lot of stuff can be misleading, but a lot of stuff can be proven. And, you mentioned amateur investigators. Well, that may be fine, but, we don't give medical advice here, but we have opinions based upon some of the policies that have been decided. But we don't dispense medical information because we don't have that cachet, that credibility. So I would urge the public to be very careful with whatever information they're getting from whatever source, whether it's NBC News or some website or some emails that they may have signed up for. Just be careful, be smart, and be cautious.
And those are great words of wisdom. As John said, I too know Mike. I mean, I've sat with Mike Lindell a few times. We've had great conversations, and indeed, he has a great success story. But I've got to tell you, folks, I am concerned. I am concerned about where information is coming from, who collected it. That's only one individual, but there are others, folks. There's information being preached from pulpits that are incorrect and wrong. These are misinformed people. There's information being disseminated on the internet, on TV, and believe me, I'm on every network you could imagine with regard to these issues. And I'm trying very hard to get people to understand that we are in a critical stage with our America First movement. And we've got to be very, very studious. We've got to be articulate, but more importantly, we've got to be credible. I've worked with intelligence officers in the military, folks, and in police departments. And the ones that I've worked with, and a lot of them are retired, and spoken to many that are still working in some sort of intelligence capacity, they're appalled. They're appalled over what they're seeing. We all know, at least I'll say this. Now, I'm not going to say I know, all right, because I don't have evidence, but based on what I've seen, something went afoul with this election. No question about it. And what we've got to do is take a step back and find out exactly what happened and who's responsible. Now, the bright side of this darkness, if you will, is that there are very credible organizations of intelligence officers and analysts working night and day on what? On investigating all that went on in 2020. You haven't heard from them. You're not going to hear from them at the moment. Why? Because these are real intelligence gathering operatives, all right? Nothing nefarious going on, but they're doing everything legally within the framework of the law, but they know how to get information and intelligence. They know what credible and actionable information is. They're not going to go on TV, and they're not going to go off and do any type of broadcast over what they're doing, because you immediately compromise your investigation. So what we've done is caution people, as John said, to look at all sources, folks. Look at the information that everybody's putting out. And then, as Reagan said, go by your instinct. Draw a conclusion. Or let's put it this way, draw an opinion based on what you're researching, but you would draw your conclusion on evidence that can't be refuted. John, I have not seen any evidence at all that can be presented to a court. And the people I know Rudy Giuliani, great guy, America's mayor, unable to bring evidence. Mike Lindell, unable to bring evidence. And I could go down the list. They say they have evidence. Well, where is it, folks? I want to see the evidence. Now, that doesn't mean that there was no fraud. That doesn't mean that there was no corruption. That doesn't mean that there was no organized plot to do whatever was done to disrupt that election. I believe that election was disrupted. Nobody's going to convince me that Donald J. Trump could have 50, 60,000 people as an audience and Joe Biden's in his basement and wins. But it goes back to this. We need the evidence. We need to see what you have. Now, I've heard Rudy, and I've talked to some people that know him, and he says, and he said this, John, I saw him on the air before I went on the air one night. He said, oh, I have the evidence. It's in that room. It's in file cabinets. Produce it. Let us see it. We've got other people saying that they've got evidence that China was involved in getting involved in disrupting the campaign. Well, okay, let's see it. All right. Let's not just go on TV and tell the American people, well, this is what we have, but based on this opinion and that opinion. And by the way, folks, and I know a lot of you don't want to hear this, Donald Trump's not going to be reinstated as president of the United States by the end of this month, August. Not going to happen. The Supreme Court is not going to rule 9-0 to reinstate him. Not going to happen, folks. Okay? But to Donald Trump's credit, to President Donald Trump's credit, and the credit of credible people who are looking to do what's right for the country, we're working hard to do what? As the real investigators are involved in this very difficult task of putting pieces of a puzzle together, we're looking at 2024, folks. We're looking at 2024. And John, may I add 2022, the midterm elections. John, my concern is this, and please weigh in on this. By the way, John and I don't talk about these things before the air. He may be opposed to something I say, and he's going to voice his opinion. This is what it's all about. But John, in my opinion, to a great degree, the left is laughing at us because we're distracted. We're anchored down by these investigations and forensic audits and on and on and on. I'm saying they're necessary, but let the investigators do their work. Everybody wants to do a TV show, whatever they do. Well, that's their business. But we've been so anchored down and distracted. Where are we going in 2022? We need to get the votes out. We need to get the people out. And when people tell me, well, I'm not going to vote, it's going to be corrupt, or we got to make sure the machines are this and that. Well, folks, listen, the truth of the matter is it's not going to happen overnight. All right? It's not going to happen overnight. But we've got to do our duty to the best of our ability to get out and to vote. All they got to do, John, is watch us melt. And my concern is now we're fighting amongst each other. And we've got to start fighting the communists and the socialists and get our people, and when I say our people, conservatives, American patriots, elected to office.
So the concept of the 2022 elections, 2024 elections is what's really on the table right now. I mean, let's assume all this stuff that is, all these rumors and all these different theories, let's say they were all true. It would be unprecedented in American history, and there would be really no way that I could see, and I could be wrong, but how a president who left office is actually reinstated. There's no process provided for that, and you would have more than a constitutional crisis. You potentially have a very dark place in America. So let's take that off the table because that's not reality, as you point out. But what concerns me, and I share some of the concerns of the comments that have come your way, are the 2022 elections. We do have to get control of the election process, and we have to bring it back. Now, I think those audits, this is just an opinion, but I think those audits that are going on in Arizona and in Pennsylvania, where they've just decertified a bunch of election machines for the 2022 elections, I think these efforts are geared towards securing the 2022 election. I mean, we had some strange anomalies in the presidential election, right? The Republicans gained seats in the House but lost the presidency. We seem to have lost every critical county on the top of the ticket at the presidential level in key counties where there seems to have been, at least publicly known, some stuff going on, such as windows being blocked, videotapes of suitcases being pulled out from under the desk. All that is important. But we do need to do two things. We need to get the vote out, and we need to make sure that the elections are secure. And so I don't know how we do that without, uniting behind an effort. But being distracted, as you say, to different people saying different things that you want to be true. Listen, I don't know what Rudy Giuliani has. If he says he has evidence, okay, I have no reason to doubt him. But as you point out, I think maybe it's time, we see that evidence. because as an attorney, and he was a good one. I mean, what he did for the city of New York as a mayor, but more importantly, what he did for the city of New York when he was the U.S. attorney, is beyond approach. But we have to be careful. We have to be very careful and focus on winning these elections in 2022. That's how you beat the communists.
Well, John, what I'm hearing from people is false expectations are being put out there. And
Yes.
they're asking a real good question. Why don't all these so-called investigators come together, work together? It looks like they're competing with each other. That's why I said, ladies and gentlemen, there are credible investigations going on. And what John just articulated regarding the voting machines in those districts that have been decertified, there's where you had enough evidence, right, John? You had enough evidence to make sure they were decertified. That's what I'm talking about. There was evidence and there was action taken. So now, moving forward, what do? Well, we move forward, all right? We focus on getting the vote out, doing the best we can what we have. But what we do not do is give up. We do not stop the fight. We do not say, well, I'm not going to go out to vote. We've got to go out and do this. That's what they want us to do, folks. So all I would implore you to do is this, is look at everything. Everything. If you're going to research this stuff, look at everything and ask yourself the questions. Who's doing the investigation? Who are the investigators? Now, I've got to tell you, I myself looked into the background of some of the people doing forensics for some of the people we see on the news. I got to tell you, folks, I'll just do this. Okay? But you do the research. You look at it. Don't take my word, as John said. Don't take John's word. But you do your own research and find out for yourself where all this is headed. But what we must do, the enemy are communists and socialists. Those are the people that we have to remove from office come 2022 and then remove from the White House in 2024. All right, John, big news, obviously, is Cuomo. Now, the question people are asking is, well, where does New York go from here? Do we stay with a socialist agenda out of Albany? What happens to New York City, which we could talk about in a minute regarding 2 cops running for office? Or do we really move on forward with introducing some good, credible, actionable laws that will help bring New York back?
Well, the whole Cuomo thing is really an American tragedy. But I think there's some politics at play. You know, 2 things could be correct. Okay. For example, it could be correct that all the evidence that was put forth by the Attorney General of New York is accurate. It could be correct. And I'm always concerned, no matter who the target of a report like that is, on how on what was the motivating factor and how that evidence was gathered and so forth. I mean, I was general counsel for the sheriffs. When you're in law enforcement, your job is to put bad guys away, put bad guys in jail, and enforce the law. But the concept and the idea that Cuomo is a creep is certainly credible, based upon more than just that report, based upon anecdotal people talking in the political world in New York City. But what could also be true is that he may be right, and that this was a political hit job on him. So they took something that was actually actionable in a weakness of his, and his political enemies went after him. That could be true. What he's saying there is quite possibly true. And in a state like New York, where it's heavily Democratic, and you know this, Steve, the fights start to become within their own party. So I'm a bit suspicious that he's being taken out by the hardcore lefties of New York City, the mayor de Blasio, the AOCs, that wing of the party, who want Albany. You know, you can argue whether or not Cuomo was a socialist, but I don't think he was the purebred socialist that AOC or de Blasio favored. So, you know, when you see this kind of, you know, where a political party so readily, from the president on down, dismissed this governor pretty easily in face of an investigation that is just that. It's just an investigation, not findings of facts in a court of law. You know, you got to ask yourself what's coming next. So I'm really concerned about what's following. Now, Lee Zeldin is running on the Republican side. Congressman Zeldin is running for governor on the Republican side. But the idea that you could have a Republican governor in the state of New York in 2021 is very, very doubtful when you take a look at the math of the state with regard to how many Democrats, how many Republicans, and so forth.
Well, here's my take on the Cuomo issue. He deserves everything he's getting, John. I hold no mercy on this guy. What he did to President Trump and his brother Chris on CNN, night after night after night, we had to put up with all sorts of nasty allegations against conservatives, against President Trump, against the America First movement. So these guys deserve everything that they got coming to them.
Oh, I agree with you on that.
Yeah, I hear what you're saying. Believe me. Yeah. You know, I'm fed up with these liberals and these communists and socialists not being able to take it. I mean, here's a guy, John. You've been around with me a long time. Here's a guy that allegedly committed all these acts against these women, and the first thing he does is what I hear criminals say when I've arrested them. Oh, the woman did it. Her dress was too short, or her blouse was too low. She caused me to grab her. She caused me to do this. And then he uses this, which was really offensive, I think. Oh, you know what? I'm not a pervert. I'm Italian. I mean, come on, John. Give me a break. You know, as a human being, right, where to draw the line. And he just has a problem. And as one of the victims, I believe, said, the guy needs help. And so does his brother.
Well, as I said, the two could be true. I mean, when he's saying it's a political hit job, it could be true. And as to be clear, the fact that he could be a creep is it could be true as well. I just don't know direct. I am not involved with anyone in the Cuomo administration. I don't have any friends there. I know this. I know that when you talk about the indicia of guilt and how people behave, I mean, I'm not going to suspend my common sense either. Okay, but I just concerned that because I've been for 25 years, I've been saying to my friends in the Democratic Party, and I have lots of friends there, your party is being hijacked by a group of crazies, and these people hate America. Oh, no. And here we are 25 years later, and that's exactly what happened. And, you know, got to remember, when AOC won her primary in New York, she beat an established Democrat. Bob Crowley had a lot of money. He was a well-known. He was also the party leader in the Bronx of the Democratic Party. So these communists are going to eat everyone that's not purebred, and that's what I find interesting about some of the communities that support the American left. If the American left ever got complete power, and they're trying right now, the first people to go are some of these special interest groups. Because they're not going to be pure enough.
Well, John, you're right. It goes to the point of how the Communist Party works. They'll use these special interest groups, and then they'll eliminate them. As simple as that. John, let's move down to Florida a minute. Governor Ron DeSantis, more than 49,000 sworn law enforcement officers across the state of Florida will be receiving a $1,000 bonus, including the great men and women of the Jacksonville Sheriff's Office for the hard work they displayed in their communities. So Governor Ron DeSantis is rewarding his law enforcement officers for the hard work that they've done and continue to do. When here in New Jersey, and I tweeted this out, while New Jersey police unions and the second police union here in New Jersey, while they betrayed their members by endorsing Governor Murphy and his socialist anti-police agenda, we have a governor in Florida rewarding his cops. Now, folks, one may ask, why am I hard on these police unions? Well, I'll tell you why, folks. How could a police union endorse a governor who had an attorney general who did what? Who recommended bail reform? You got criminals now out on the street even before they get into the police station, who wants these review boards, civilian review boards, where cops were going to be doing their job and second guessed by a bunch of political hacks sitting around a table, because that's what these civilian review boards are, folks. They're just political appointments, and they're probably going to be put on as a result of their political allegiances. And the poor cops out on the street are going to be second guessed. Some of them may lose their jobs, et cetera, et cetera. So So we have a governor in New Jersey, and obviously you have one in New York, felt the same way. You got a Newsom out there in California who's finally getting kicked out. So, John, my question is, how do these police unions, and by the way, this is not the membership, folks. I've spoken to cops in those unions. I think it was the Port Authority police union, and get this, New Jersey State Troopers Union. It's just incredible that they're standing there proudly taking pictures with the very people, John, that, in my view, have jeopardized the lives and careers of their membership. Go figure.
Well, Steve, you are, I believe, a union president locally, correct? So,
Correct.
So if there's anyone that understands the politics of unions, everyone can kind of just see for themselves that the unions are going to go in a state like New Jersey with who they believe is going to win. So the leadership of those unions believe, because I've negotiated union contracts, several of them with the unions. They believe that being with the winner is better for their overall membership. That's their argument. Their argument is, look, he may not be what we want, but he's the only game in town that we have to cooperate. Now, if you want political change, and you want to acknowledge that you can do better, it starts off with the leadership of the unions taking a chance and taking a risk. At the end of the day, in New Jersey, the governor is, even if he wins, he becomes a lame duck within 18 months. So the police unions could look forward to working with someone else down the road. But it's all about the money. There's a comment here. It's all about the dollars, and that's what's going on. And of course, you also have the anti-Christie wing of the unions who believe that Christie hurt the PBA. He really took on the teachers more than the police. But the police unions in New Jersey, the leadership sometimes is disconnected from the membership, as you pointed out.
Well, it's all about the dollars, and it's all about the leadership, I think, misrepresenting what the will of the membership is. So you're right, John. All right, how about this, folks? How about you? I'm sure many of you have seen this on your own social media platforms. You just mentioned the word COVID-19, and a little alert thing comes up, and it says this, and this is, John, what I tweeted out earlier. I get a kick out of some social media platforms. If you mention COVID in a message, they tag it and refer you to the CDC for information and resources. Well, that's the organization, the CDC, folks, that can't do math and messed up Florida's numbers. We need to tag them and refer them to a math class. So, folks, it's a matter of trust, right, John? So now the CDC really, look, you talk about politics, folks. They're going after DeSantis. They somehow say they messed up on the numbers, and now they have to go back and redo Florida's numbers, and it isn't as bad as they were trying to lead all of us to believe. So, John, I followed that up with this, and you're a lawyer, and I'm going to ask you this question. Since we're in the mood, all right, of auditing and doing studies and investigations, why can't we have an audit of the CDC? Find out where their numbers are, where they get them from, how they're collected. And this is where I think there's a failure in our party. Sometimes, we go down the wrong road. It's like investigating cases. You're looking in the wrong places, guys. Go right to the heart of it. Get a commission set up, subpoena CDC people. Let's see, as we said earlier, let's see the evidence. Let's see where you get your numbers. Because I've got to tell you, folks, there should never, ever, ever in this country be any mandates of any vaccines, of any mask. No, no, no. This is the United States of America. And John, I've explained even on national TV, this has morphed from a protest against the vaccine to a protest against those who look to take away our freedom and liberty. So can that be done, John? Can there be an audit of the CDC?
Well, we already have systems in place in the federal government. We have, there already is a mechanism for the CDC to be audited. They just, they're not going to do it. They're not going to do it now in the middle of the pandemic. They may do this later. But, you touched upon, we're talking about evidence, and you have to be careful when you're when you're evaluating and so forth. The CDC, it's no secret that they've taken a major hit with their credibility, and for good reason. I mean, the CDC. I mean, first of all, you have to understand these public health supposed experts. What have they gotten right so far? Okay. The first thing they said was, what did Fauci say? Don't shut the country down. If you shut the country down, it's xenophobic. Remember? I mean, this guy actually said, so you have to evaluate what they say. Oh, don't wear masks, he said originally, because it doesn't do anything. Now, what's changed since? I mean, did the size of the virus particles change? Did the method of transmission change from when he first made that statement? So, I mean, people judge there, and when they see an agency like that do a left and then a right and a left and a right, where it starts to make sense, people tune them out. And so let me just point out one other thing. Rand Paul, Senator Rand Paul, just yesterday or today said people should start to protest with regard to these mandates. And I'll let people decide what that form of protest would be, whether it's you comply, you don't comply. I'm not going to make any recommendations. I'm a lawyer. I would never ask someone to break the law if there is a law. But, the fact of the matter is the credibility of our institutions, particularly in this public health crisis, have taken a huge hit. You can't be telling people one thing and then telling them another thing later. And then where is the evidence? We saw Dr. Fauci before Congress, before Senator Rand Paul, arguing with him is arguing with science. So I got news for you. If that's science, boy, the human race is in trouble. That's all I can say to that.
Yeah, John, let's talk about that word protest. So here's what's going on with regard to very effective protests. And I would venture to say the most effective protest, folks, is when you hit people in the pocketbook, when you hit these companies in the pocketbook. For example, you got 3 airlines just decided that their employees by mid-September have to get the vaccine. They have to be vaccinated or they get fired. Well, guess what's happening, folks? I understand, I've been told that those 3 airlines are going to be in financial trouble real soon because there's some sort of a national boycott, passenger protest, passenger boycott, where they are not going to fly on those airlines. And lo and behold, John, now there's 3 or 4 other airlines who announced, we're not going to do that. Sit on our planes. We're not going to mandate anything. So there you go, folks. Financial hits. Let's take the Olympics. You get all these people out there embarrassing our country, kneeling, getting on TV, get your vaccine, on and on and on. Well, what happened with NBC? Millions of dollars in revenue losses. Why? Because people tuned them out. The NFL, Major League Baseball, folks, believe me, they're suffering. They're suffering as a result of what they are trying to push upon the American people. So the greatest protest is not buying their products. The greatest protest is getting together and simply saying, no, enough is enough. Now, on the other end, John, what I see has been very effective around the country, and we encourage people to do this, and John is right. You go within the framework of the law and you'd be surprised what you can do because the law is on your side. With regard to the mandates regarding children wearing masks in schools. Folks, I'm going to tell you a little story. I was elected to a school board, elected to a city council, and if there's anything I learned, and by the way, again, I'll say I left, I term limited myself. I believe when you run for office, it's a temporary job. So I wasn't obsessed with getting reelected, okay? And the reason why I tell you that is this. There are people who will run for office, and they don't want it to be a temporary job. They want it to be a permanent job. They will do anything for votes. And I'll tell you, folks, they'll sell the soul of their relatives to get a vote. Now, you get 10, 15 parents together in a very civil and organized way. And I know you know this, John. You've been involved in the system. You have to be one of the few honest guys, with great integrity that got involved in this process and are still involved in it. You go to a school board meeting, and folks, Just watch when you get up in a civil manner. I'm not saying don't go there and threaten them. Oh, we're going to vote you out and all that. Just go there and tell them your position, and then tell them this: we're watching. We're watching. And then you go to the next meeting and the next meeting. And then there's an election that's going to come up. And guess what's going to happen? You make sure that during that election cycle that you've got a half a dozen people running for those seats. Now, here in Nutley, New Jersey, folks, I've never seen this before. There was a conservative group, and we had the leader of that group come on some time ago. And John, you know who I'm talking about, right? You were at the breakfast meeting that we had that said enough is enough. We're going to start to address the problems from the school board level all the way up through the city council, etc. And what happened? They developed a web page, a Facebook page, 400 residents, 400 people on that page, and about 8 or 9 people, John, and I know you know this is probably really unusual, are running for the school board. So out of the 8 or 9 running, if you've got 4 conservatives and you get 3, you just took control of the school board. So that's how it's done, folks. Peacefully, within the framework of the law, but going after the heart of the problem, which is what? Politicians who are more concerned about their little tiny political career. See this, John? See that little space there? My wife showed me that. My wife said, you see this? This is the amount of power they have, folks. Just look at that right there. See, that's the amount of power they have. We have the world. We have the power. We have to exercise it. And I know, John, you've been very engaged in Oakland, New Jersey, of building a force to be reckoned with of people who are saying, you know what? Why don't we join the Republican club there that you are now president of? Because I've heard this myself and get results.
Listen, I don't, school board elections are, as you know, Steve, a lot of people don't even understand them. A lot of people don't even know there was a school board election in their town. And so, and the way the boards recruit candidates is they recruit their friends who are like-minded and so forth. But it's been my experience in New Jersey, Massachusetts, some of the Illinois. These school boards have no clue what to do when a real political campaign opposes them, because a lot of their own campaigns have been stealth types. They can't even find people sometimes on their side to run. But as you point out, we don't. We can protest, we can do all that, but the best thing we could do is run for office. And I believe a lot of the school boards, particularly in New Jersey, will fall rather quickly. What's going to happen in Nutley, when you have that many people running, you can essentially take over the school board completely. There's other issues in New Jersey because some of the stuff that's being mandated out of Trenton now with regard to curriculum and so forth, which may be unconstitutional. There's been some constitutional questions raised about that. But we have the power. We can, if you just got to get off your butts and go to the meetings, get involved, read everything. Look at this poor woman in Rhode Island, Steve. She asked for the documents as it related to equity, critical race theory. It's a simple open records request. They have to comply with it. What happened? The teachers union suing her. Why don't they want her to see basic documents? So, and look at her. I mean, she's standing up to the teachers union,
and she needs the support of the public, which is very important. Now, folks, Campaign for America, I want to talk to you a little bit about, and then we'll wrap things up. We're not the most loved organization here in New Jersey, particularly here. The GOPs in New York and Florida and other places, they like us. Now, how do I know they like us? When you get an invitation to speak at different political events in other states, New York, for example, we're going to be in Washington soon, Florida a lot, Virginia, and on. At Dallas, Texas, Louisiana, we've been all those places, okay? When you get invitations from candidates and the GOP organizations in those states to come to help them get elected, they're showing you a level of respect, and they're showing you that, you know what you have can be an asset to us to help our candidates. So the question I've been asked, John, is you're not doing much in New Jersey. Not doing much. Well, here's what we're doing, folks. Only a couple of GOP organizations have invited us to come and speak and to talk to voters. And we've invited, I've actually sent emails out to a lot of different chairs in this state. And out of 21, I got to tell you, 5 or 6 did respond, okay? And we're going to be helping them. But what bothers me, John, what bothers me is, and I've said this all along and nothing new, the New Jersey GOP, I'm talking about the state New Jersey GOP, has a lot of work to do. And I'm worried about this election. They need to reach out to grassroots people. And look, they don't have to invite us. We're not the solution to all the problems. I'm not saying that. But they've got to use every single channel to get the grassroots voters. And I don't see that happening. And folks, so we are on the ground in New Jersey. In fact, we're going to be in Middlesex, Burlington County. We're in Ocean this weekend. We're going to be in Passaic County. And John, some of these places, I'll give you the list. You could join me. These are local grassroots GOP organizations. And some of the chairs there have invited us to come because they see the gravity of the situation, folks. And the gravity of the situation is that we have some serious problems to deal with. Now, we've got Jack Ciattarelli running for governor. Great guy. We're supporting him. I'm supporting him. And folks, I got to tell you, he's taken positions that are going to be very, very helpful to our state. Now, let me just add one more thing, John, and we need to talk about this a little before we wrap things up. There are conservatives that say, well, I'm not going to support Jack Ciattarelli. I'm not going to support so-and-so in the Assembly or the Senate. Why aren't you supporting them? We're running against communists. Well, they don't agree on this or they don't agree on that. Ronald Reagan, John, his picture's behind me, once said this: get half the pie. Once you get half, then start slicing it and get more and more as we move on. So let's look at, and this is why we as an organization have been successful, folks. Let's look at what we agree on and move forward. I believe, and I believe this, and John, you've talked to Jack Ciattarelli and others, we got a seat at the table. We have a seat at the table for the first time in a long time with regard to New Jersey moving forward. And we're going to be having a seat at the table, I believe, in New York City when Bill Pepitone gets elected mayor. And we'll talk about that in the next broadcast. But my point is, John, we cannot get to a point where we're just going to throw the towel in because John McCain doesn't agree with everything Steve Rogers said. John McCain and Steve Rogers need to come together at one point and work for the common good of the people.
Listen, anyone that has a wife or children or parents, I mean, do you agree with them all the time? I mean, it's almost an irrational position to say, this person doesn't agree with me on, 3 issues, but agrees with me on 10 others. And but those 3 are really important to me. Listen, I'm not going to decide what's important and what's not important to a person and what issues and how to vote. But I will say that, this is not a parliamentary system where, you have, 15 different political parties representing 15 different ideas. Each party puts, under their tents a lot of different ideas. And you have those fights within your party for the best ideas. That's what America's about. It was founded on compromise. It wasn't founded upon blunt political force, except for, getting rid of the British. When we had the Constitutional Convention, it was very contentious. The same thing happened after the Civil War when we went to add the amendments to the Constitution post-slavery. So, one of the good things about the internet now and shows like this, Steve, is that we can talk to people and say these things that they may not have heard before or considered. And I think that's the best asset that we can bring to people is say, look, please engage, but don't be disappointed if you don't win everything that you're trying to win. We've got to work together. And right now, the enemy is at the gate. And they want to enslave this country. No, let me rephrase. They want to tear it down and build some sort of communist utopia, which, of course, is goofy, anti-intellectual, and it can never work because it doesn't take into account what human beings really are. We're complex. We're good.
And John, may I add this, that Republicans have to stop calling other Republicans names because they disagree with them. Let me give you an example. And I've gotten a lot of emails from people, Republicans, conservatives, who disagree with some of their friends, and they're being called rhinos. They're being called all sorts of names. And my answer is this, folks, and please listen carefully. Abraham Lincoln, Ronald Reagan would be called rhinos today. Why? because they crossed the aisle. Remember that, John, in history when you read that? I was around when Reagan was president, not around when Lincoln was, but obviously around when Reagan was. Maybe you were around, John, when Lincoln was. But here's my point, folks. When we share with people that we need to sit down, not with the communists, there's no room for negotiation, but there are Democrat conservatives. We need to sit down and let's have a discussion and let's work on what we agree on. Oh, no, you can't do that. You can't talk to any Democrat, on and on and on. Then if you do that, you're a rhino. Well, folks, Abraham Lincoln, he had to sit down with the opposition to make sure that when the Proclamation of Emancipation was finally instituted by him, that there would be no more bloodshed. Ronald Reagan, how many times, John, did we say he sat down with Tip O'Neill? And they had a lot of discussions regarding what they agreed on. I tell you, folks, politically, diametrically opposed, but they were willing to sit down. And then there was no name calling like we have today. So you're either on one side or the other, all right? And that side is you're either going to be on the side of the socialist communists or you're going to be an American patriot. And when we say, as Republicans, when we say we stand on the Constitution of the United States and we respect that flag, then we need to understand that we're saying to our supporters, to people in our party and who believe in the America First agenda, that although we may disagree on certain policy issues, we're going to agree that we do have the best interests of the people at the uppermost part of our agenda. John?
Steve, if we don't, we're going to lose. Period. That's it.
What a way to close it, folks. If we don't, we're going to lose. He's right. So let's make sure we come together. Let's not get anchored down by distractions and who was the governor years ago, or the did this or did that years ago. Let's stay focused. Let's stay focused. President Trump launched a wonderful, beautiful America First agenda. And the only way that goes away is if we allow it to commit suicide. I'm not going to allow that to happen, folks. I'm not going to allow my kids and my grandkids to be brought up in a country that's going to be run by socialists and communists. So we must come together and do the best we could with what we have. Pray for our country. Always ask God for guidance. Always ask Him for wisdom. Do your own research, and then you make a decision based on what you've learned. Not what I've said, not what John said. John, the last word?
Good night.
Good night, folks. Thanks for joining us here at Campaign for America. We'll see you next Wednesday night, 6:30 p.m. Here, go to our website. It's right there in a little red banner. And if you just stay in contact with us, we'll let you know where we are, what we're doing, and how we're doing it. That's it. Thank you, folks. God bless you. God bless America. And remember, what is the chief end of man? To love and to glorify God forever. Have a great evening.